Culture and the Arts present Youth Week 2018, empowering our youth, shaping our community, protecting our future. The week of activities kicks off on Friday, November 9th with the Minister's Address from 8 p.m. Saturday, 10th November, Health Fair 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Cuthbert Peters Park War, and the Fitness Revolution 3 p.m. Concord Junction. Sunday, 11th November, it's the Peace Concert, Grenville Bus Terminal. On Tuesday, 13th November, ministers meet with the youth at Her Majesty's Prison. Thursday, 15th November from 5 p.m. It's the Imani Graduation, Youth Awards and Gala. And on Friday, 16th through the weekend, it's the National Youth Service Weekend. Every parish get involved. And on Saturday, 17th November, it's Youth Expo, Explosion Fashion and Cultural Day. 2 p.m. until at Hero Square, Victoria in St. Mark. So remember, Youth Week 2018, November 9th to the 17th.
There's so much going on with the NNP, and we're just getting started. From candidate launches to contests, events, and breaking news, be in the know. Get notified first about big events and announcements. Plus, we're here to listen. We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment, tell us what's working and what's not. Like what we're doing? Let us know. The NNP is working for you. Interact with us on Facebook. Come on, Grenada, get connected. Like us on Facebook/NNP Grenada and keep moving.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated. Peters Park War and the Fitness Revolution, 3 p.m. Concord Junction. Sunday, 11th November. It's the Peace.
Hence the reason we have made it our prerogative to ensure that your key is in safe hands with us. Here is how you can unlock your success with an education loan from the GDB. We offer you 3 loan options. We've got our regular student loan, our work-study student loan, and our special student loan. Our regular student loan is for persons who wish to pursue full-time tertiary level education. If you are a permanent employee who wish to study while continuing your employment, then our work-study loan is for you. Our special student loan is in collaboration with the Government of Grenada, geared towards vulnerable persons who would like to pursue higher level education. Remember, you must have proof of admission from a recognized institution here at home or abroad. All our loans are 100% financing with interest rates as low as 5%. Get your funding from GDB today for your tertiary level education, your technical training or vocational training, even professional development, with up to 12 years to repay. Your future success is today. Grab it now.
Gratuity is not a payment from the employer in addition to pension. Gratuity is an advanced payment on pension. It is equivalent to and the same as a salary advance. Under the 1958 pension formula, a worker had the option to receive an advance payment on his or her pension of 25%. thus reducing his or her monthly payment to 75%. For example, if a public officer's pension worked out to be $2,000 a month, and he or she took a gratuity of 25%, his or her pension will be reduced to $1,500 a month. The gratuity or prepayment of a pension will then be $500 per month by 12 months over 12 and a half years, and that will equal $75,000. Preliminary costings have shown that if government were to agree to the demands of the unions and associations, This will add upwards of $21 million annually to the payroll, bringing the cost of pensions to approximately $74 million annually. This provision of the 1958 Pension Act must be reformed, as the state cannot finance this cost. Also, this cost seriously breaches the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Any pension plan must have two basic features. It must be sustainable and affordable. Let us be clear. The gratuity payment of $75,000 in the above example has to be repaid by the retiree through monthly deductions of $500 for 12 and a half years from his or her pension. This is why, when a gratuity is paid, the monthly pension of the worker is reduced.
Good morning. I am Philomena Robertson, Press Secretary to Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. Thank you for joining us for this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. Now, the focus of our press briefing this morning is the current impasse between the government of Grenada and the public sector trade unions. As you are well aware, over the last few days, teachers represented by the Grenada Union of Teachers have not reported to the classroom. 2 days last week in the first instance, and the action is continuing this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And in an escalation of the action, workers represented by the Public Workers Union have also been asked not to report to work today and tomorrow. At the heart of the impasse is pension restoration and reform. With me this morning is Minister for Trade, Industry, Cooperatives, and CARICOM Affairs, Honorable Oliver Joseph, who himself was a trade unionist for many years, serving as an executive member of the Public Workers Union and also the umbrella body, the Grenada Trades Union Council. Minister Joseph, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Having had the benefit on working on both sides of the fence, so to speak, as a union representative and now as part of the government, you are uniquely positioned to speak on the issue. I'll allow you to do so.
Well, thank you very much. So let me give a brief background to this issue so that we can set it within the proper context. 1958 Pension Act made provision for established workers who are qualified to receive a pension. At that time, it was the qualifying age was 33 and a third years. That is the amount you had to make. And it was reduced through negotiation to 26 and 2/3. And I was involved in that negotiation, so I remember it very good. When we went to the government and said, 33 and a third is a total long period. Let us consider 26 and 2/3. In fact, when I was preparing for the negotiation, we got this formula from St. Lucia. And that was in the 90s, but I remember it, as I said, because I was integrally involved in it. So that is what was at stake. And that was in place up to 1983. But let me first say, under the Act, you receive only one pension from government. So there was only one pension, because there was no NS. So only one pension was available. In 1983, the government then passed the Pension Disqualification Act on the 4th of April, 1983, which superseded and canceled the 1958 Pension Act and make it mandatory, a contributory plan where the employer and the employee will contribute to national insurance, and all workers will qualify and benefit on the national insurance scheme once they qualify. So to get an NIS pension, you must make 500 contributions, and NIS contribution is calculated on a weekly basis, so 500 weeks. So you could say 10 years, because 52 weeks in a year. Then you will get only an NIS pension. So that was to maintain the one pension. But this was fairer because, as I indicated, under the 1958 Pension Act, you had to be a permanently established worker to benefit from pension. So if you were unestablished or daily paid worker, you were not given a pension. However, in the 1983 amendment, with the coming to being of NIS, all workers who contributed to NIS would receive an NIS pension at the age of 60. So when this government came into office, it said, we need to look at pension reform and see how we can address this issue and address the concerns of workers that the NIS pension is not sufficient to allow them to live an adequate standard of living in order to meet their basic commitments. And a commitment was given by this government to review, reform, restore pensions. And that is where we are today. So where? So recall, at the 4th of April 83, Humlin Armstrong took her matter to court and said that she was entitled to a gratuity and pension, having joined the public service before the 22nd of February 1985. Now, why 22nd of February 85? Because that is the time when the law that was passed to abolish pension was gazetted. And that is why the court ruled that the effective date for the disqualification is February the 22nd, 1985. And that was the important ruling in the Humlin Armstrong case. It's not that the court restored pension for everyone. It said, because the law was gazetted on the 22nd of February, that then became the effective date for the disqualification of pension. And she started working before the 22nd of February 1985. So what did the government do? In keeping with the court ruling, the government restored pension to all workers that came into work before the 22nd of February 1985. And that cost the government $7 million in restoring pension. So the question of pension restoration was addressed by the government, and that is the only legal obligation the government have, to restore pension to workers in accordance with the court ruling before the 22nd of February 85. The government is under no obligation whatsoever to pay pension and gratuity to workers that came after 22nd of February 1985. So what did the government do? They met with the unions and said, let us look at reforming the Pension and Gratuity Act so that the workers who came after 22nd of February to the 31st of December 2018, the government, together with the unions, can address the issue of pension. And so the unions started meeting with the government-appointed pension committee to work out a formula for pension and gratuity in keeping with the government's commitment of reforming pension. And that's why the 70% minimum guaranteed is a negotiated amount. There's not anything that is in the law, because there's no law and pension. So the union is claiming, therefore, that the 25% gratuity, that the government had agreed with it, it is not in the MOU, it is not in the collective agreement, and then so they could not produce any document that was signed between the union and the government-appointed team. The latest position that I've heard from the union is that the 25% is enshrined in law. In other words, it's contained in law. So before I came on the program, I did some research. It is not under the Teachers Pension Act. It is not under the act that governs the public workers, because the Pension Disqualification Act supersedes and cancels the 1958 Act. So I'm not aware of which act that they are referring to now. However, I need to make the point that if it is under an act, then you are legally entitled to it, then that is a matter that can easily be addressed in the court. They can do it like Hummel and Armstrong went to court and get redress. So if, as I said, they are legally entitled to it, then they can go to court and argue the case that they are legally entitled to 25%. But as far as the government is aware, there is no such act that contains a 25% legally binding gratuity for public sector workers. So the government proposes a 2% gratuity payment and a 98% as a worker's pension. I think that is important to understand. In the old formula, if you got 25%, then you will get 75% as your pension. So if you are getting 2% now, it means that you're entitled to 98% as a pension, and therefore you'll be getting more as a pension. In addition, every time public sector workers get an increase in salary, pensioners also receive an increase. So you will be getting an increase in your pension. You do not get increase in gratuity because that's a one-off lump sum payment. So what we are saying is that the workers are offered a higher pension than the union is asking for. For example, if a public officer's pension worked out to be $2,000 a month, and he or she took a gratuity of 25%, the pension will be reduced to $1,500 a month. The gratuity, which is a prepayment on pension, will then be $500 multiplied by 12 times 12.5 years, which is equal to $75,000 payable at the time of retirement. However, under the government's 2% offer with a 98%, instead of the worker receiving $1,500 per month, they will get $1,920 as a pension, and I said with future increase. Now, the demand from the workers. They are demanding the 25% gratuity. As I said, there is no agreement, and if there is any agreement, the union is free to produce the agreement. The union demand will add up to $21 million annually to the payroll, bringing the cost of pension to approximately $74 million annually. This amount, first of all, is not affordable, neither is it sustainable. If you have to find $21 million additionally to add to the payroll, it means that you will have to cut back on a number of areas. Therefore, we'll have to send home the Imanis to get the money because we have to get 21 million extra. We'll have to close the house repair program. We'll have to stop the debushing program. We'll have to cut back because remember how the budget is done, you know. It's an annual estimate of revenue and expenditure. And allocations are made based on sectors. And therefore, to find an additional $21 million will mean getting it from some other allocation that's made. It's simple as that. So if the government is to agree with the union's proposal. Then the poor man out in St. David's who looking for 2 fortnights, or Mr. Samuel who waiting for me to repair his roof and build a toilet, and there will be no money left for that. Or the 1,300 Imanis that we're taking on, there will be no money left. The money will have to be used to meet this bill. Well, no responsible government could take a decision to commit the state, because what you commit is a state pension, you know. So any government coming thereafter will have to pay it when you commit the state to that. In addition, there is a Fiscal Responsibility Act that is in place. And there is a public expenditure rule, which states that you cannot exceed expenditure to over 2% from the previous year. This amount will mean that we will have to bridge the Fiscal Responsibility Act. If we bridge the Fiscal Responsibility Act, it means that the financial pledges that we have, we will not receive it. It means that hundreds of millions of dollars in grant funding will not come to the state because of the breach of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And the only reason why government have received grant funding and so much praise for its economic performance, because we have ensured that we remain disciplined, exercise fiscal discipline, and remain within our budget. And therefore, to give up all that in order to satisfy the demand of public sector workers that have already benefited over the last 5 years from $110 million in retroactive pay, a 10% increase, 3% in 2017, 3% in 2018, 4% in 2019, just for public sector workers. This government cannot afford to neglect all the other sectors in society. We need to stimulate economic growth in the country. We need to reduce unemployment. It will be highly irresponsible for this government or any government to get into agreement that will see the other sectors of society suffering. And therefore, we call on the unions to go back to the bargaining table, to sit with the pension committee, to see how we can reach agreement on this matter. Because it's not a simple matter of the government just refusing to pay 25%, or that the government agreed to pay 25% and now, instead of that, offering 2%. Because that is the basis for the industrial action, you know. The basis for the industrial action is the trade union saying to its members that government agreed to 25% and then just change it to 2%. And yet they have not provided any document to show that the government signed an agreement for 25%. And so we are saying to the membership that there is no agreement in force and that the government is willing to continue talking with the unions in the interest of the country. And therefore, what is at stake is the future development of the country. We have to be responsible, as I said, and ensure that we act in a manner that will benefit all the people. We have serious issues with the action taken by the unions. There is a procedure to follow when there is a dispute between workers and employers, whether it's in the private, public sector. You have to follow certain procedures. If there's a deadlock, you go to the Labor Commissioner. If it's not resolved, you go to the Minister for Labor. As far as I'm aware, the matter was not referred to the Labor Commissioner or to the Minister of Labor. And the workers, the union asked the workers to take strike action. So the cabinet has decided that in accordance with law, if you withhold your labor, then the employer can withhold its wages. So if you did not provide labor, then you should not expect to be paid for days that you did not work. And therefore, workers who did not show up for work, on the days on which they did not work, the salary will be deducted for days not worked. And that is within law, and the unions know that. In most unions have what they call strike fund, in case something like that happens, where they have to pay the workers when the employer deduct the wages. And the cabinet has decided at its meeting Monday that that is the course of action that will be taken for workers that decide to withdraw their labor. You have a right to withdraw the labor under the Act. It's very clear. Workers can withdraw labor and the employer can withdraw the wages. And therefore, we are saying that we would like to see the workers return to work, go back to the bargaining table, and let us reach an amicable settlement to the matter. And I think we can if the negotiations continue.
Thank you very much, Minister Joseph. I think it has been made pretty clear. Government would like to resume negotiations with the unions to ensure that we resolve this matter. And as he has just stated, the Cabinet has taken a decision that for workers who have withdrawn their labor, the government has the right and will exercise it to withhold its wages for the same period. Members of the media, the floor is now open. Any questions?
I have a question.
Please identify yourself and your media house and use a microphone.
Okay, so my name is Rina P and I'm from MTV. The question, yesterday a meeting, or we were advised at a meeting between the union and members of the government occurred. Now after that meeting, public workers announced their members to pull back or to collaborate with the other unions. What happened that led to that escalation between the government and the unions?
Because the position of the union remained the same, that they are entitled to 25% gratuity. So if you go to the bargaining table and say, well, all we want to hear talk about is the 25% gratuity, then you are not prepared to negotiate. You don't negotiate in that way. So if you're holding on to your demand for 25%, which I mentioned does not exist in any agreement or in any law, because that is what the reform is addressing, you know. So if you want to revert to what happened on the 1958 Act, then you are not going through any reform, because you want the same thing that existed before. But the reform is to address the workers after 22nd of February to December 2018, and the contributory plan from January 19 going forward. So the whole thing is talking about reforming pension. So if you continue to insist that we want what existed before, then what is the room for reform? Remember the 70% minimum arrived at through negotiations by the both parties, the 70% replacement pension minimum. That is not contained in any law. It is through negotiation. And we see that gratuity as well must be through negotiation for a new formula, because in the current formula it is unsustainable. You can only reach an agreement on something that you can afford. And I said it is committing the state, not the government. That's why it's called a state pension. Any government that comes will have to address it. And so we have to act responsible.
Just another question. How soon would you want the negotiation team to meet on to you?
I wish they could meet today.
Okay.
Good morning, Minister. We heard that, I know in a previous statement made by the head of the negotiating team, Beryl Isaac, that proper procedure was not followed in terms of industrial action, and that we even heard from the education minister that teachers who stayed away from the classrooms run a risk of not being paid for the days that they did stay away from the classrooms. Is that a consideration by government?
It's a decision of the cabinet.
Can you give specifics?
If you withhold the labor, then we withhold your wages. That's what the law says.
So for clarity, the teachers and public servants who are staying away from the jobs, at the moment, they would not be paid for the days that they have stayed away.
Yes, if you did not work, then you shouldn't expect to get paid.
Okay.
Good morning, Minister. Leslie Ann Johnson, GIS. Just looking quickly at a statement here from the Public Workers Union where it mentioned members, parliamentarians after only 4 years, one term in office, receive full gratuity and continue to receive gratuity every 4 years that they remain in office. I'm not sure if you saw it. It's a bit lengthy, so I don't want to go through the whole thing in the interest of time. So can you just shed some light on that for us, please?
Well, I'm glad you raised that. Now, there's no one pension formula in Grenada. Every sector has different pension rules. If you look at Grenlec pension plan, it's different from Nawasa, and it's different from the government one, and it's different from SU one. So parliamentarians have a different one. You expect parliamentarians to serve for 26 years and 8 months to get a pension? So I don't understand the comparison. Every 5 years, you must go to the polls to seek a mandate from the people to be re-elected, to get your job. If after one term and you're not re-elected, you don't get a pension because you have to serve 8 years to get a pension. And you have to be age 55. So they're not telling you the full story, you know. If you make 8 years, so Kate Lewis and Kindra, who are in the early 30s, if they make 2 terms, right? And say 32 and 8 is 40. They have to wait until 55 years to get a pension. So it's not like parliamentarians are all just entitled to a pension after 8 years. And it must be different, and it's different all over the world for parliamentarians because of the nature of the job. It's the most temporary job you have, you know. After one term, you're gone. But you have permanent employment in the public service. You're appointed there permanently, and therefore your period of time says 26 years and 8 months. I don't know if you want if you say that for parliamentarian, well, there's only one parliamentarian will qualify, there, Dr. Mitchell, who served 34 years. No one else will qualify. It's a different group of workers. So you cannot look at it and say, well, members of parliament benefiting. In business, they say they higher the risk, the higher the return. Well, as a member of parliament, you take big risk. You give him a job and go to politics, not knowing if you will succeed. And after one term, you go without a pension. So I don't think it's a fair comparison. In addition, let me say finally, that the last time parliamentarians got an increase was 23 years ago. 23 years. The group of workers who was talking, they get increased every 3 years. 1995, they can go and look at it, was the last time parliamentarians got an increase. And since I was elected as a member, I keep speaking out against that. It is time for members of parliament to get increased, because if you're in grade K and above in the public service, you get more money than the minister, you know. Grade K and above, because the minister's salary is 67,000 per annum. And they know it because it's in the estimate of revenue and expenditure. So I don't understand the comparison that they're making at all. That is not a basis for going forward to taking action.
For clarity, Minister, are you saying, based on the fiscal responsibility law, that the 2% proposed is the only offer that government is willing to work with at the moment? What can you give us a ceiling as to how much government may be able to do?
No, wrong the negotiating table. That's why they need to go back and ask that question around the negotiating table.
Do we have any further questions? Yes, we have one.
Minister, just to clarify, you said that 25% was not agreed upon on the
Yes.
MOU. Was there any agreement as to the amount?
The government offered 2% as a gratuity. The unions said that they were seeking to get 25%, and that is where the unions walked out of the negotiation.
Prior to the 2% that was offered before, when the MOU was signed, was there agreement as to the amount that they would receive?
No, there is nothing in the MOU about the amount. That is, it was there for negotiations. Everything was open for negotiation. So let me make it clear that this government is committed to pension restoration and reform. And since 1983, no government ever addressed this issue, because of the cost to the state. And this government has now given a commitment, and this government has honored its commitment to restore pension to all workers who came in before 22nd of February 85. Do not lose that point. $7 million restored pension. And now we are reforming pension going forward. And we are at 70% minimum guaranteed on your last salary. That is what is being offered by the government, and 2% as a gratuity. That is what is on the table.
Government is waiting on the union to see when they can return. The union is waiting on government to see when they can be called back to the table. Who decides on when?
The government team, the negotiating team, will send a letter to the union indicating that they are willing to entertain negotiations.
Minister, there doesn't seem to be any more questions, but I think it might be important for us to clarify the point about the 70%, how we will achieve that, because of that, a certain percentage is paid by NIS, and whatever does not meet the 70%, that is where government would top up. But that's in addition to what government is already contributing to NIS to begin with.
Yes, well, I see why I didn't go into detail, because there seems to be general agreement on that. The union has... It didn't seem that that is an issue. That's why I spend so much time on the gratuity. Yeah. So NIS, after 500 contribution, you're entitled to 30%. So if you make 500 contribution, you can get 30%. And you get 1 additional % for every 50 contribution thereafter, up to a maximum of 60%. So what the government is saying, that if you get 30% from NIS, the government will contribute 40 to make it a minimum of 70. If you got 50% from NIS, if that's what you're entitled to, then the government will top it up. And that is the going forward. That's how, but the minimum that any worker will receive as a pension with NIS and government combined will not be less than 70%. The workers guarantee that, a guarantee minimum of 70% as the pension with NIS and government doing it up. Remember, the government pays half of the NIS and the worker pay half in a contributory plan towards the worker pension at age 60. And there are other issues that that need to be clarified as well, in terms of after 26 and 2/3 years, regardless of your age, whether you qualify. And the leader of the government team already explained that it is at the age of 60 that you will qualify to get a pension from government. Because it cannot be the same thing as pre-85. It must be reformed to what is in existence now. And that is why we are addressing this question of pension reform, in order to take on board all the other workers that was not entitled to pension. And just to repeat again, there is no legal obligation on the part of government to provide pension and gratuity to workers who came after the 22nd of February, 1985. It is this government that has given a commitment to address reform and ask the union to come to the table to discuss the matter of pension reform.
Can you please use the microphone?
What does the MOU speaks to as it relates to remuneration for these workers?
Well, I remuneration with the pension, okay, remember, yes. It's pension reform and restoration. So the MOU sets the broad guidelines for the negotiation. That is what it speaks to. Just like in the Constitution, speaks to a pension as a right. There is no formula in the, if you read the pension, there is no pension formula there now. When you join the service, whatever law is in existence to deal with pension, that is what you benefit from. Whatever law is there. So if when you join after 85, the law there that says NIS pension, that is what you get. If when you join, it says government and NIS, then that is what you get. All it says in the Constitution is that you have a right to a pension, but you would not see a formula there. That is negotiated between the unions and the employer. As I said, we had brought it over from 33 and 30 years to 26 and 2/3 when I was in the union. So these things are negotiated separately. The Constitution recognizes any law that is in existence at the time.
Minister, just for clarity, I know you spoke about the gratuity payment and the impact in terms of the economic impact it can have in relation to the fiscal responsibility law, but if we think about it realistically, we would not have 10, 15, 20 persons retiring at the same time per year. In terms of working out the payment, will it still be that significant?
It will be significant. You have to think about all the workers who started from 22nd February 85, you know, come right up to now, you know. So there will be people who 85 would have reached 60, didn't get anything. You have to go retroactive. It's just like the 7 million that we paid. That was only for 56 workers, you know. But because they retired before and they did not get anything, you have to go and pay them retroactively, you know. So they did. That's why it for 56 people, it's $7 million. Well, it has to be paid retroactively. Okay, you qualify. So it cannot be the same formula.
Minister, can you just clarify for me? There was a call by the NDC senators for a repeal and replacement of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Can you speak to that?
There will be a call. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is there to ensure fiscal discipline, you know. You know what, they set the targets there. What is salary and wage bill should be 9% of GDP. Public expenditure rule, no more than 2% in the previous. That has led to great success and stability in this country, you know. That has led the economy to have a surplus of 5% on the recurrent side. So sometimes when you use the word surplus, you think, well, you have a lot of money. What's about the capital side? The budget has two sides, you know. The recurrent side, that is the money you spend every month. You keep recurring. The capital side, and you need a lot of money for capital because you do not want to take loans. So the more money you could save on the recurrent side is the more you will have for the capital side. So when I call for the repeal of it, I don't know what you're going to achieve by that, because that is what brought us to where we are today. And that is what caused Grenada to be getting all this praise for having the discipline. Because what it does is discipline the government, you know, in its spending, to limit how much you can spend, so that give the economy a chance to grow and allow the government the space it needs to spend in other areas. So I don't understand the call for repealing it. What is hoped to achieve? Okay, if you repeal it, so you say, okay, repeal it, pay the 25%, so you have no constraint now. Pay the additional 21 million. You know what that will lead to? You have to start borrowing money again for everything. The debt start going back up, which you got right down from 108% to 63%. And what the IMF and World Bank will say, well, you are very irresponsible, so we cannot give you any money. The millions of dollars that we've been promised, we will not get it. And do you want us to go back to the state where we had to borrow money again and bring back up the debt again and then go through a next structural adjustment program? That doesn't make no sense. It will be irresponsible, and we have to start borrowing money to pay salaries when you increase it, the wage bill. So we are on the right track. We are seeing the gains that we are making, and we cannot turn back now. That is as simple as it is.
Minister Joseph, you formerly served as Minister of Economic Development. Can you honestly say that the 2% being proposed, taking into consideration the incomes and expenditure, given the state of the economy, the cost of living, can you honestly say that the 2% is workable and is a fair payment for public officers and teachers?
No, well, you see, when 2% is not an increase in salary, you know. The 2% is a gratuity payment, which is a one-off. So it's not like if given the cost of living, that has nothing to do with it. Because we're saying you get 2% and you will receive 98% as a pension. So you're getting more money to deal with the same cost of living that you are talking about. And you will get increase on top the pension every year that public sector workers get increase. You too will get increase on your pension to deal with the issues that you are talking about. But our concern is increasing the wage bill and increasing the pension payment and the gratuity by $21 million and growing every year. I said, if you look at the budget and how it is allocated, you will have to take from other areas to get that $21 million. So it is not something that is sustainable, and therefore we'll have to see what is the optimal solution.
And just finally from me, if the protest action escalates and we possibly see a shutdown, is the government prepared to deal with that type of situation? What is the plan?
The government will deal with any situation that come up, because that is what we're in government for. We'll deal with it as the situation arises.
I take it there are no further questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the media and those who tuned in via television and also live stream on Facebook, thank you again for joining us. This brings us to the end of this week's post-cabinet briefing. Our guest, Minister Oliver Joseph, and the subject, the current industrial impasse between the government of Grenada and the public sector trade unions, which surrounds the issue of pension restoration and reform. Some of the key takeaways from this morning are that the government is prepared to return to the negotiating table. It has asked that the unions come back. This appeal has been made on several occasions, most recently here this morning by the minister. Also, the government has stated that it simply cannot afford a 25% increase. There is no agreement to that. The government's offer is 2%. The unions are demanding 25%. If the government accedes to this demand, it will have severe repercussions for other sectors of the economy. So that's just a couple of the key takeaways from the discussion this morning. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Now, in just a few minutes, we'll go to a commercial break. We have a presentation that's going to be made this morning pertaining to the amendments to Chapter 17 of the Police Standing Orders. So we'll be right back with you. Stay with us.
The Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts present Youth Week 2018, empowering our youth, shaping our community, protecting our future. The week of activities kicks off on Friday, November 9th with the Minister's Address from 8 p.m. Saturday, 10th November, Health Fair, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Cuthbert Peters Park War, and the Fitness Revolution, 3 p.m. Concord Junction. Sunday, 11th November, it's the Peace Concert, Grenville Brush Terminal. On Tuesday, 13th November, ministers meet with the youth at Her Majesty's Prison. Thursday, 15th November, from 5 p.m., it's the Imani Graduation, Youth Awards and Gala. And on Friday, 16th through the weekend, it's the National Youth Service Weekend. Every parish get involved. And on Saturday, 17th November, it's Youth Expo, Explosion Fashion and Cultural Day, 2 p.m. until at Hero Square, Victoria in St. Mark. So remember, Youth Week 2018, November 9th to the 17th.
Local Disaster Office.
I remember when this beach was really wide, a place to picnic and play cricket.
And we used to go up to the end to get away from all the people. Now all the beach gone.
Coastal erosion. When the sea starts to come in and take the land away, everyone loses something.
Granny, look how the waves are washing right under that house.
Coastal erosion. It's a hazard. Hazards. Take control. Reduce your loss. What can you do to help stop coastal erosion? For one, don't drive four-wheel vehicles on seaside dunes. They loosen sand and destroy binding vegetation, causing erosion. Find out more about coastal erosion and other hazards at your local disaster office. A message from the National Disaster Management Agency and SEDERA.
Look at this email.
Looks like phishing.
On the internet?
Phishing is an illegal attempt to obtain financial or other confidential information from internet users through an email or website that appears to come from a legitimate organization. Here's how not to get caught. Don't open email attachments you did not expect to receive. If unsure about an email or website, call the company to verify. Change your passwords often. Don't use the same passwords on multiple sites. Use a secure website with HTTPS instead of HTTP. Monitor online banking accounts regularly and check your statements.
This message is brought to you as a public service announcement by ECTEL, the NTRC, and this station.
A little rainfall and you come home and your house gone. Gone. I never thought this would happen to me.
Told them it could happen, but they never paid me no mind. Never.
The whole road gone down the hill.
Landslides happen all the time. Sometimes little, sometimes big. Hazards. Take control. Reduce your loss. You can do something about landslides. Trees and shrubs on hillsides bind earth together and help stop landslides. Preserve vegetation. Stop landslides. Find out more at your local disaster office. A message from the National Disaster Management Agency and SEDERA.
When a dispute arises between a consumer and the telecommunication provider, the telecommunications provider should take all reasonable steps to amicably resolve the complaints filed by a customer. If the provider fails to make a reasonable effort to amicably resolve the issue, the consumer can seek the assistance of the NTRC. The dispute must be an issue the NTRC can consider. Disputes such as billing, sales order delays, and services are often disagreements the public will raise with the telecommunications providers. The consumer needs to make their complaint in writing to the NTRC. After the complaint is submitted, the NTRC will ask the telecommunication provider to confirm all the details relating to the complaint and send it to them for response or for comments. The NTRC might also ask the consumer for more information. All the information will be shared with all the parties and everyone has an opportunity to respond. The NTRC may suggest a way to resolve the dispute at this stage, or it may give a view on what the likely outcome will be if the dispute continues through the NTRC process. The NTRC may choose to resolve the dispute through conciliation, mediation, and alternative dispute resolution techniques wherever practicable. The person making the complaint must be the account holder or authorized to make a complaint on behalf of the account holder. All complaints must have been made with the telecommunications provider first before seeking assistance from the NTRC. When it comes to dispute resolution, the main aim of the NTRC is to ensure that every effort is made in good faith to resolve disputes amicably in the interest of both parties.
The ministry.
Gratuity is not a payment from the employer in addition to pension. Gratuity is an advanced payment on pension. It is equivalent to and the same as a salary advance. Under the 1958 pension formula, a worker had the option to receive an advance payment on his or her pension of 25%, thus reducing his or her monthly payment to 75%.
November from 5 p.m. It's the
violence. With me this morning, starting at my immediate left, I have Ms. Andrea Noel Victor, who is Inspector of Police and head of the recently launched Special Victims Unit. To her left, we have Ms. Elaine Henry McQueen, who is Senior Program Officer in the Ministry of Social Development, and she's also head of the Division of Gender and Family Affairs. Next, we have Police Commissioner, well known to us in the country, Mr. Edwin Martin, and over at the extreme left, Mrs. Naomi Jeremiah, who is a Senior Administrative Officer in the Ministry of National Security. Now, as we start, I'll just turn right over to Ms. Jeremiah, and she will share an overview of what this project has been all about. Ms. Jeremiah?
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson, and welcome to this very important launch. Today we at the Ministry of National Security are here to launch a very important chapter of domestic violence and sexual violence, a project that was commenced in 2015. Against the backdrop that Grenada has taken a number of proactive steps to address the issue of domestic violence by implementing the necessary legislative framework to guide the administration of justice. The framework includes the enactment of Domestic Violence Act of 2010 and subsequent approval by Cabinet of the National Domestic Violence and Sexual Abuse Protocol for Grenada in January 2011. The aim of this chapter is to provide a systemic approach in the administration of justice as it relates to domestic violence and sexual abuse. The primary role of the Royal Grenada Police Force is law enforcement. However, the force is committed to work within an intersectoral, collaborative framework to meet the various needs of victims of domestic and sexual violence, including but not limited to psychosocial support, medical care, and social safety nets. Every police officer has a responsibility to provide appropriate and effective response to enforce the laws against alleged perpetrators of domestic and sexual violence. This project, as I previously said, commenced in November of 2015 for a period of 1 year. The objective of this project was to amend Chapter 17 of the Police Standing Order with that of the Domestic Violence Act of 2010 and the Domestic Violence and Sexual Abuse Protocol. This amendment here today will provide guidelines and procedures on how to deal with situations that will ensure the victims are protected and the perpetrators are brought to justice while ensuring the individual rights are not violated. For this project to become a reality, a committee was established to revise the police standing order. This committee comprises of the following: representative from the Ministry of Legal Affairs, representative from GNO, Grenada National Organization of Women, representative from RGPF, Social Services, Child Protection Authority, and Legal Aid. Funding was from the UN Women Project, US 10,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeremiah, for that overview of the project. Ms. Elaine Henry McQueen, I'll come to you now, and you'll walk us through the implementation of the project.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. Good morning, everyone. The message which I'm going to share is more about the environment in which these standing orders will be implemented. The Ministry of Social Development and Housing and Community Empowerment is actually very pleased to continue the partnership with the Ministry of National Security, the Royal Grenada Police Force, and all partners in that issue of addressing one of the human security problems in Grenada, and that is gender-based violence. Today, this partnership includes the handing over of the recently revised Chapter 17 of the Police Standing Orders. This document updates the instructions that are given to police officers on how to respond to reports of domestic violence and sexual violence. And when we talk about sexual violence, it is both about sexual violence against adults and sexual violence against children. We are assured that the improvements which the police has been making over the years is enshrined now in their standing orders, and therefore there is no turning back. The police or law enforcement responses are continuing to improve. We have worked with them over the years, and we are certain, and we know, we have evidence that the services are improving, and they will continue to improve, we are promised. We must therefore continue to strengthen and entrench mechanisms in relation to psychosocial, healthcare, and justice responses, so that each in turn can reinforce each other's work and build a network that does not break down when they are needed. And here we mean that whilst the police is strengthening its services and responses, the psychosocial service providers at the Ministry of Social Development, in particular the gender-based violence unit in this ministry, the healthcare response provided by the Ministry of Health and all the hospitals and healthcare facilities, and so on, all have to improve simultaneously so that we can help each other improve and we will not break down on each other when we are needed. This is part of a continuous effort by the government and people of the state of Grenada to improve and systematize responses to gender-based violence. Grenada has adopted the human rights and gender equality approach in keeping with two main conventions that we have adopted, and those are the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, known as CEDAW, and the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, which is also called the Convention of Belém do Pará. As a result, there are three components of this strategy that work together for an effective response. One component is providing protection and support to victims. This helps the victims to recognize, cope with, and recover from the physical, psychological, social, economic, and other effects of the abuses that have been committed against them, often by persons they know
and sometimes by persons they love and trust, and many times in places that they're familiar with and have to return to, such as their homes. Another component is holding all offenders and perpetrators accountable. The actions of offenders violate the rights of the persons they have abused, whether they share a domestic or family relationship or not. Maybe they share no relationship at all, but their actions have violated the rights of another human being, and therefore they have to be called to answer for their actions. The third component is preventing gender-based violence. This requires all of us to work together to create a culture that rejects the use of violence and abuse as a means to enforce power over others, and moreover, to remove the power imbalances between women and men. And that is to say, we have to work together to build a society that practices gender equality in the homes, workplaces, churches, transportation, and indeed throughout the country. That is why this revised chapter of the police standing orders is so important. We all understand that the police have a crucial role to play both in protecting victims and holding offenders accountable by bringing them to justice. When they do that, it would help the society reject the use of violence and abusive behaviors. Police officers throughout the country and within the Special Victims Unit now have formal instructions that were revised to synchronize their actions with the laws and policies that are in force. In recent years, the Division of Gender and Family Affairs, which is the national gender machinery for the state of Grenada, has led a series of actions and worked with a wide range of partners to address domestic and sexual violence. We are pleased that responders, partners, and the public are responding favorably to the actions taken thus far. We encourage members of the public to continue to make reports to the relevant authorities. We also encourage you to continue to call on perpetrators to change their ways and to respect the rights and dignity of every human being, whether man, woman, or child. We encourage you to continue to support victims to speak out and to seek help. And we encourage all of us to continue to create a society based on gender equality and respect for the human rights of all. In the last 3 months, a technical working group was established to consider strengthening and coordinating the responses to these forms of violence. We all look to the day when services are available to provide short, medium, and long-term support to victims and survivors, and that those services are better coordinated. We look to the day when the responses to monitor, punish, and rehabilitate offenders are reformed. We look to the day when we are seriously addressing also the pervasive problem of sexual harassment, which is included in part within the labor code, but it is not yet enforced. And we look to the day when we all can reduce and finally end these special programs to address
Like they're forgetting, try as my
And good morning to you, Grenada, Carrick, Petey Martinique. Once again, it is time for Hard Talk. Yeah. And your name is?
Devon Romain.
My name is Sheldon Scott, and for those of you viewing on camera, we laugh at Devon now. Devon are laughing at you today.
It's not funny.
Yeah, man. You going down and check it out after? Or
Yeah.
You had it checked out already?
I already called Doc and...
So you're going down and check it out?
Yeah, going down and check it afterwards.
All right. You're lucky it's not your mouth, it's your hand. So,
it's my hand, so I can still talk.
Yeah, you put on a little first aid on it, thing on it there, you understand?
Yeah, to keep it bracing and so. No, and I wasn't abused.
Brenda, is that you? I want to know it. But we'll talk that one off air. We ain't going to talk that one on air. That one is not for air. You'll talk that one off air. But, folks, we're very sorry. We lost our audio coming from the ministerial complex. We were broadcasting that presentation that was being done by there was the Royal Grenada Police Force there, the Domestic Violence Unit, the SVU Special Victims Unit of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and so together with the Ministry of National Security. They were doing that presentation there. But we've lost our audio contact with the ministerial complex. As such, we had to cut it. Yeah. But it's now 11 minutes after the hour of 11 o'clock. What we'll do, though, is we'll obtain the full audio and video from the Government Information Service. Yeah, we'll ask them nicely and hope that they give it to us so that we can broadcast it for you at a later date. All right? Yes. So you're Devon Romain, I'm Sheldon Scott, and this is Hard Talk.
Yeah, Hard Talk, real Hard Talk.
Yeah. Minister Joseph, good morning to you, the Honorable Oliver Joseph. Yeah. He really put forward a strong case on behalf of the government of Grenada. And let's get something straight here, because there's this kind of misconception that when you're talking about paying out monies and you're talking about who wants increases and so on, people are screaming, give them the increases, and give them this and give them that. Now, understand something here. It's not Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell money they're speaking about. It's not Honourable Oliver Joseph or Honourable Peter David or Honourable Nicholas Steele or Honourable Pamela Moses or Honourable Kendra Matthew and Stewart's money they're speaking about. It's your money. When they're speaking about increase and find the money and so on, they are telling each and every Grenadian find the money.
Yeah.
There are some people that hiding in the background and talking about, push full strike and so on. And let me congratulate the public workers for coming out to work today. Yeah, the one or two that stayed home, you're really missing them in the system because some of them doesn't really be doing much anyhow. But anyhow, did I say that? Yeah. But let me congratulate the public workers for by and large coming out in significant numbers to work today. Yeah? Because I'm still trying to understand. Okay, right now as it is, the government of Grenada legally does not have to pay a single cent in pension or gratuity to teachers, a single cent in pension or gratuity to public workers, or police officers, or prison officers. Legally. Yeah? That's because of the Pension Disqualification Act of April 4th, 1983. The government of Grenada doesn't have to pay a single cent in pension. Zero. Right now, what could have been on the table is 0 and 0. 0% pension and 0% gratuity. The government has decided on moral grounds, not on legal grounds, because to be honest, the teachers' union has no legal ground to stand on, nor does the public workers' union. They have no legal footing to stand on. Hence the reason Minister Joseph said, if they believe that they're being wronged and they can take it to the courts, the same way Ms. Hermelin Armstrong did, and she was successful. So if they believe they have a case, they can take it to the court.
Of course.
What it would mean, though, is that for several years, again, those people who really should have been getting their pension and gratuity right now on moral grounds would be out there suffering without a cent to get. And government has said on moral grounds, give them a pension and a gratuity. Outside of the contributory pension that workers now receive, they don't receive a gratuity, they receive a pension that they are contributing to right now. That is what replaced the 1958 Pension Act on April 4th of 1983. The pension that workers receive right now the money that they put into the national insurance scheme, they get a little something at the end of the month. And some people, Devon, what kind of figures you hear people just get from NIS as pension?
I'm not too sure, but as little as $600-700 upwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are some
next to nothing, basically. You can't really do anything with that.
No,
you get it, but you can't really do anything with that.
Yeah.
So government is saying, listen, that ain't good enough. So here's what the government is willing to do. Give you up to 70% of your last salary. Up to 70%. Not your full last salary, but up to 70% of your last salary that you were working for. Right? So if you was working for 1,000, that should be 700.
$700.
Right.
Yeah.
So whatever you were working for before, the government is willing to give you up to 70% of your last salary. They are also willing to give you in advance 2% of your payments that you're supposed to get over 10, 12 years so that you can get a lump sum. It is optional. Gratuity is optional. You don't have to take your gratuity. But some people may decide that, look, the better way for me to deal with this is to take my 70% of my last salary at the end of every month, and out of that, I'll pay the bank or I'll pay the credit union or wherever I owe. I'll pay that and have the rest to survive on. Others are saying, I ain't too sure how long I'm going to survive, so I want my gratuity. I will take the 2% of my salary. It's basically, remember, the gratuity is a salary advance. It is not something in addition to pension. Gratuity is a part of the pension. And I think that point needs to be made. Some people are thinking that the gratuity is some sort of big payment that people just get
on the side. Like a bonus.
Yeah. The gratuity is not a, we just speak about.
Not a bonus.
It's not a bonus.
No. Or is a pay or something like that.
Exactly.
It's not that.
The gratuity is a salary advance. Like you go to your boss and you say, boss, listen, I have some bills I want to pay this month. I can't wait until end of month. Forward me a little 2% of my salary early, please. Exactly. So that I can handle my bills and I will repay that 2% over the next 12 months. So every month you're going to take out a little something out of my salary until you get back that 2%. Yeah? That is what is taking place with the gratuity payments to teachers. And strange enough, I am absolutely convinced that 90% of the teachers do not understand this.
And some public workers.
Many other public workers as well do not understand this. The 2% that's being spoken about means that you are getting 98% of your money. This 98% of the 70% now, you're going to be getting 98% of that to go home with on a monthly basis for the rest of your life. Well, not for the rest of your life, until you have repaid, if you take the 2% gratuity, until you have repaid the 2% gratuity payment that you have gotten, and then you receive the 100% of the 70%. I know sometimes the figures just tie people up. So let's go over it again. Let's say your final salary was $1,000. That's the last salary you work for with the government of Grenada after you complete your 26 years and 8 months. Then you're going to be receiving $700 a month as pension. Yeah, $300 less, but you're receiving $700 a month as pension. You may adversely decide that you're going to take a lump sum of money up front, be it a 20-something or 30-something $1,000, whichever figure that it works out to when you take different things into consideration. So when you take that, you will not be receiving a $700 a month. You'll be receiving $700 minus the 2% until you've repaid that 20-something or 30-something $1,000, which means you can use that money and you could decide. Some people might decide they want to go on a vacation. They take it. It's up to you what you want to do with it. That's your money. You do what you want with it. Some people might go on a vacation. Some people might put an addition on their house. Some might take it and use it on their children, education or some kind of thing. Some may use it on their grandchildren.
Some may have a loan and want to advance the payment.
Right. Some may decide that they want to buy a new vehicle. They don't do anything with it. Devon, you seem to be in pain, man. Have some Excedrin there, you know. You want one? No, that's serious. I have painkillers there, you know, if you need. You'll be okay? Sure, you'll be okay, man. Yeah. All right. You know, we doesn't hide things from Molly. We just say it, everything live on air. We don't hide things. That's my brother. So anything, I had to check on him one time. Yeah. So the gratuity payment that they're speaking about, the gratuity payment, they're saying that instead of taking 2% upfront of the total amount over 10 or 12 years, they want 25% of the total amount over 10 or 12 years. Government is saying to them that to make such gratuity payments, now at the end of the day, whether 2% or 25%, you're going to receive 100% of your payments.
Definitely.
It's just if you're getting 2% upfront or you're getting 25% upfront. Government is saying to pay 25% upfront is going to put such a strain on the consolidated fund that you're going to end up in a situation where the country basically would become financially unstable. That if government has to do that, and then once you have to do that, you have to do it across the board.
Across the board.
And then you have to start making retroactive gratuity payments to a lot of people who are within the system right now, or who would have left the system between 1984 and now. You have to start making those payments. It will bankrupt the country.
Oh yeah, send us right back.
Or you have different options. One, close the Imani program. Send home every young person under the Imani program. Close it and send home all those young people. That's one. Secondly, close the bushing program. Yeah. The 8,000 or so people that have been working under that program and the environmental wardens program, close it. And we're not fear-mongering here. We're saying what is the fact. These are facts. Yeah? So close the Imani program, close the bushing program, and look at possible retrenchment as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't afford to pay the amount of people within the system right now, you have to start trimming the system to reduce the amount of payments that you're going to have to make on a monthly basis. So that might have to be another option that government could look at. Yeah. Reduce the size of the system. Yeah.
And then remember, government is already, right, obligated to pay workers at 3 or 4% this year and next year in terms of the...
But that's the other part that the unions are not telling their workers.
They're not.
That each time public workers get a pay increase, the same pensioners are going to be receiving that increase too. So the 2% they're talking about right now. Remember, on the other end, when you're speaking about the 98%, that 98% will not remain at 98%. Over every year, when they receive increments and they receive their local increases and so, the pensioners have to receive their increments and their increases as well. So it's not going to be a static situation that it's just the 700 and the 700 alone you're going to get. After a while, it might be 725, then 750, then it might reach up to 800. Then over a period of time, it might reach up as high as 900 over a period of time, because as workers within the public service receive their increases, the pensioners have to receive their increases too. Yeah, that has to be reflected in what the pensioners are getting.
Another serious point that our workers or even some of our people fail to realize. Look, over the last 5 or 6 years, government has been able to pay to workers in excess of $100 million, right, in monies that were owed to them. They have negotiated pay hikes, right, for workers for the next 3 years, right, and that's an increase, right. Look at economically the bills that government had to pay after getting into office in 2013 to basically stabilize the economy. And so over $110 million in back payments and so to different private sector organizations, and so government had to do that. It did all of that and still was able to meet with workers, negotiate in advance, give them payments. I mean, come on, have they taken all of that into consideration?
And one of the interesting things, and it came out of the meeting this morning, is that since we're speaking about 25%, those teachers who have stayed home for the 5 days, the 3 days this week, and the 2 days last week, will be receiving 25% less on their monthly salary. Because there is no industrial action, and the union leaders know this. There is no industrial dispute between the government of Grenada and the Grenada Union of Teachers. LL, you and your union will have to find the money to pay that 25% to each and every teacher that has stayed home during this period. And remember, we're going into Christmas when they would like to have their money.
Of course.
Yeah? So they're going into Christmas with 3/4 of their salary. So the 25% actually falling on the other side, because you and the union legally will have to find the money to pay the 25% now of their monthly salary for the month, for this month.
And I've been asked that said question by a young teacher who is not yet permanent within the system, right? Not only money, right? But she's not yet
a temporary teacher,
temporary teacher, and so. And she was asking, what will happen to me, or in terms of the day that I would stay home, and so, and on the whole thing.
Cabinet has taken a decision, because remember, this is not Cabinet's money. This is the people's money. And there are some 80-something thousand of us out here. I saw a post on it earlier there. And you have to consider how we feel too. Because it's our money that's paying the salaries. It's our money. Yes, it's yours too. But it's our money that's paying the salary. It's not the Cabinet's money. So when you do something, you're not spiting the Cabinet. You're spiting all of us who are the ones that are paying the bills on a monthly basis for you. So as such, the Cabinet has decided to protect the people. Yeah, you cannot decide that you're going to rest and reflect and be paid for resting and reflecting. There is no industrial dispute. The labor, I made sure that I asked the Minister of Labor yesterday. There is nothing in front of him about any industrial dispute between the Grenada Union of Teachers and the Government of Grenada, or the Public Workers Union and the Government of Grenada, or TAU and the Government of Grenada. And there's another union, the Grenada Manual and Mental Intellectual Workers Union, and the Government of Grenada. And all of these are the unions that represent the public workers, with the exception, the police have their own thing, the prison have their own thing, I believe the nurses have their own thing. There is no industrial dispute. So therefore, it is wrong of any union to operate as though there is an industrial dispute. Yeah? It's wrong. So, at the end of the day, since the union has decided to go that direction, they, the Grenada Union of Teachers, and the Public Workers Union for any workers staying home today and tomorrow, will find the money to pay them. And they know that legally, government is correct. Yeah, you can't just decide you're staying home and expect to be paid for it.
And for 5 days.
Yeah, well, 5 days, so it's 20 working days in the month, and you decide to stay home for 5.
So that's 25%.
So, well, 25% going back to 25%, anyhow you take it. Not 2%, 25%. So the union usually has strike fund. I remember when the TAU workers had went on strike with the breweries. I remember then President General of the Technical and Allied Workers Union, Senator Chester Humphrey, they made sure that they opened up the strike fund, and they did what they had to do to assist the workers at that point in time. So the Grenada Union of Teachers most likely has a strike fund, as all unions should have a strike fund. So they may have a couple $1 million in there that they can use to tide the teachers over during the Christmas season.
Well, I would hope so. Because if you want to take your members on a trip that I call it a trip, and you don't want to meet that expense, you can't expect government to do it. But take them out of work and it's.
But here's the thing: in the private sector, Devon, if you're working in the private sector, you can't go and demand a salary advance.
You can't.
You ask your boss if it is possible you can have a salary advance. If there is a negotiated settlement, as again, I have to come back to that name, Chester Humphrey, Senator Humphrey, as he has many negotiations with like Grenlec and so on, that they have their gratuity and they have their pensions and things sorted out and that. If there's that in the private sector, there's one thing. But the vast majority of us in the private sector, we cannot go and demand a salary advance from our employers. We cannot go and demand a salary advance. We can ask for it. If we get it, we're lucky. If we ain't get it, we're unlucky.
Nope.
Yeah? So you cannot demand a salary advance from people that legally do not have to pay you a single cent. Yeah?
And
they
that's why
do not have to pay you a single cent.
And that's why it's so important, and we keep stressing the whole question of continuous negotiations.
Yeah, because we want them to get 100% of the 70% that is mentioned in the Memorandum of Understanding.
Exactly.
And again, a point that must be made. In no document does it have the 25%. So there were people that were out there telling untruths. First of all, they said that the government went back on its agreements in the Memorandum of Understanding. Until the Memorandum of Understanding was released and everybody see what was written in there. And people look at it with a microscope and they can't find 25% anywhere in it. The only percent they're seeing is the 70% of your last salary as a pension. But they didn't see nothing. Then they said, oh, it's in the Constitution. But then, if you pull your copy of the Constitution, as I like to pull my copy, I can't find where it is right now, so I have it online. Section 92 and 93 of the Grenada 1973 Constitution speaks to pensions. Nowhere in there does it give any figures in relation to the volume of pension. The word gratuity, which is the main thing that's being discussed right now, 2% versus 25%, the word gratuity is mentioned twice in the entire Constitution of Grenada. Twice. 2 times. Within the entire Constitution. Yeah? Now, if you look within the Constitution, there is no figure in relation to gratuities. The only place that you're hearing that now, it is in the 1958 Pension Act. And government signed an MOU with the union speaking to restoration and reform. And reform. If it's simply restoration, then the 25% comes into play. But you have reform, which is why negotiations and discussions are taking place right now.
Yep.
So it can't be a situation it's just demanding that. No.
I'm just hoping that that the fiscal space is there for the union to pay their workers the 25% that they will lose. You see, I'm not making fun of it, but it's just I'm just hoping like that, because you cannot afford to continue to do something that is illegal and expect somebody else to foot the bill. All right, that is irresponsible. All right.
At the end of the day, I want the unions to understand that those of us out here who have no pension and gratuity to be discussing or talking about are the ones that are going to have to pay the bill. And when you do things that affect us, we are going to stand behind the decision of the cabinet that says, do not pay you for the days that you have not shown up for work.
Because we got to pay it anyway.
We have
to pay it. And it's unfair to us because we are not getting a pension, neither gratuity. And we still have to pay for things that that you're supposed to do when you're not doing. That is not unfair.
That is unfair to us.
That is not fair, sorry.
That is fair to us. That is not fair to us. Yeah, folks, the phone lines are open. 44073. It's 34 minutes after the hour of 11 o'clock. 4407377. You're free to call.
347-329-3101.
Hannah, there's about the third or fourth time my name calling Parang, so I'm not interested. Yeah, that's just members of the National Democratic Congress who cannot face the fact that facts and truth is spoken on this program. So they can't deal with it. They could call, they must call my name and say something they feel they know in Parang. Yes. That's what they must do. Call my name. Don't just go around, beat around, and I could sing parang too, so
Oh, yeah.
the mustn't get up. We have a call online.
Good morning and welcome.
Melvin, I seen you, eh?
Hey, Sheldon, how you doing?
Hey, quite fine, sir.
Junior George here from New York.
Hey, man, what's up, man?
Hi, cool. How is everything?
Great, man. Going wonderful.
Great. Right. So I was just checking out your show while I'm on the road, as always.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty interesting. Now, yesterday I had a interview with the president of the the Grenada Union of Teachers, Lyden Lewis. And what was profound, what he said, one of the things that's definitely going to bring a major breakdown into the system or to the education system right now is if government decide to not pay the workers or to take away the payment that was that they would normally pay because the workers stayed home. And he said that if government decides to do that, then you could look for a major shutdown in the system. Now, I just heard you said that Parliament has taken a decision.
Cabinet.
To take away, to not pay those workers for the days that they miss.
Mm-hmm.
So where does this stand? If the union are saying that if that happens, it will be a major shutdown of the educational system and government deciding to do that, where does that stand for everybody?
It means simply that...
You're kind of low. I don't know if it's my...
it's our system.
Kind of low.
It's our system that's doing that. But what I'm saying is simply this. Negotiate. Since October the 3rd, October, not November, we're in November the 13th today. Since the 3rd of October, the government of Grenada has been waiting for the Grenada Union of Teachers et al. To return to the negotiating table. And they have just bluntly refused to do so. They've just bluntly refused to do so. I'm hearing people saying that government needs to return. Government is at the negotiating table. They're waiting on the union to return and they refuse to return.
Yeah, but if what the union is saying is that if they're coming back to negotiate on the 2%, it's just simply not going to happen. So who's going to break? I mean, there's two strong arm. The union is strong arm in saying they're not willing to return for the 2% negotiation. Government saying that the union is not returning. So it's just going to be a standstill of who should return and who's not returning, and this is just going to continue for days and days and days. Anybody going to break this?
What I would say is this, that if the union believes that they have legally been wronged, if they believe that they have a document in their hand that's signed by the government of Grenada saying that they will receive a 25% gratuity, do what Hermelin Armstrong did. Take the government of Grenada to court.
Yeah, but the document doesn't say, the MOU doesn't say the 25%, or what Mr. Lyden Lewis was saying on the ride along yesterday, is that it is known, it's a given fact that gratuity is 25%, and it doesn't need to be written as such.
No, sir.
If it is already completely understood.
If you read the MOU, it says reform, restoration, and reform. If you reform, then you're going to change what is in existence before. Now, if one is to read the Teachers Pension Act, the final part of the Teachers Pension Act speaks to disqualification, which disqualifies every teacher who entered the service after the 4th of April 1984. If you read the Prisons Act, it disqualifies every prison officer who entered the service after the 4th of April 1983. If you read the Disqualification Act itself, it disqualifies every public officer who entered the service after the 4th of April 1983. In other words, it's not a given because there is no legal basis for paying that pension and paying that gratuity right now. There's no legal basis for it. Even the Hermelin Armstrong case dealt with some people who entered the service during the period 1984 to 1985 when the act was being enacted. So that only dealt with about 40-something people. That does not legally open the door for government to have to provide a pension for every public worker. But government has taken the moral ground that you can't have people working as a teacher for 30 years. You educate thousands of children, and then you go and sit down home, you can't afford medication, your roof leaking, you can't afford to take a little trip and enjoy yourself after having to go through all of the trial and tribulations you went through, or a police officer's son or rain, disaster or not, having to go and suffer out there and then when it's time for you to retire and relax, you can't do it, you have to provide something for them. So even without the legal teeth to do it, government has taken the moral ground that you're going to provide something for them. But at the same token, what about the rest of us out here who are paying taxes as well? What about the rest of us? Because if you're saying that you don't care about the Fiscal Responsibility Act, you don't care that if you decide you're going to pay at 25%, send home all the monies, send home everybody doing the bushing right now, reduce the size of the public service, and you know what they're going to do? Last in, first out. So the last set of people who went into the public service going to be the first out, and those nearing retirement. So you're going to have to go through that process. Plus, you would not be able to spend on various other projects that you want to spend on. And then, yes, people would get the 25%. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us? We're the ones paying too, you know. This is our money.
Yeah.
If LL can answer that question to me, I'd be happy.
Yeah. I'm hearing very low on my phone, so I didn't hear everything that you said. But this is at a standstill, and you know, again, one of the most powerful takeaways from yesterday is right along with the president of the Grenada Union of Teachers. You know exactly what he said. There would be a major shutdown if government decides to take away the payments from the teachers for the days of rest and rest and relaxation, or whatever they officially call it. And by you saying that, I'm waiting to see what next would happen, and if this is just gonna keep lingering and keep continuing for the next couple of weeks. At the same time, the kids are away from school and not able to study as they're supposed to. I just watching this to see how far it's gonna go and who actually gonna be the big person, step up to the table and meet each other on the half or wherever it is.
All
so
right.
I'm just monitoring from a distance, but close at the same time.
Everything else okay, my brother?
Yeah, man, everything else good. Devon, big up yourself. Thank you so much, guys.
Yes, man. One love.
Yeah. What we're going to say is this, yes, the children are away from school and so on, but it's their parents that have to foot the bill.
Yeah.
And the children themselves, because when they go and they buy their conkles and their sweetie, that I really shouldn't be giving them, but they buy their conkles and their sweetie and these kind of things, they are paying taxes as well. They're paying VAT on those items. They're paying taxes as well, and they are the ones who, when they finish school, want to enter a Imani program to get the opportunity to enter a company or to get their foot in the door and get the training so that they become employable. Yeah? Their brothers and sisters or aunts and uncles and so maybe the ones working in the debushing program. Yeah?
You know, a very interesting thing that comes up. Now, on the 3rd of October, the union walked out of negotiations with government, okay? Now, they are claiming, right, that for them, what are they going back to the negotiation table for if government sticks on the 2%? My God, if you walk out of a discussion and negotiation because of some dispute, isn't it the best and the right thing to do to return to that negotiation table and see what is being offered and not just stay outside and make empty claims and say about, oh, if government offered this, they're not going back. How you know what government is about to offer? You have walked out.
But the other thing is this, and this is kind of responding to Junior's question as well, that wherefore from here? Now, the thing is this, simply that you cannot pay 25%. There's not a way, there's not a calculation that you can pay the 25% without destroying a lot of the social benefit programs that we have here in Grenada, or destroying your fiscal responsibility. And if you do that, if you sign on to something like that, you have to take into consideration that, remember, the same unions are going to be negotiating pay raises again for 2020 and 2021, 2022,
come next
2023.
year.
They're going to be negotiating for that the pensioners will have to receive their increases with as well. So whatever the bill would be, if you sign the 25% now, know that it's going to continue increasing year after year after year after year. It's going to continue increasing. You will end up with a situation simply that the government will not pay teachers who have not gone to the job last week and who have not gone to the job this week. Government legally can do that. And the cabinet has taken a decision that they will do that. If the Grenada Union of Teachers decides that they want to extend the strike, then I hope that their strike fund has a lot of money inside it, because they will have to pay the teachers until such a time that the teachers return to the classrooms.
Imagine,
it's the parents and the teachers that paying, you know.
Imagine, in 8 working days that you're supposed to be working, you taking 5 days for rest and reflection. Is that fair?
Oh no, you want to rest and reflect. Nobody have a problem with you resting and reflect.
But for 5 years?
No, if they want to rest and reflect for 5 days, Devon, they can rest and reflect for 5 days. And government cannot pay for 5 days. That is the law. It's legal. Nothing is wrong with that. We have a call online.
Good morning and welcome.
Yes, good morning to you, sir.
Morning.
And morning to your co-host.
Yes, sir, good
now,
morning.
you see the complication that this thing caused. It takes me way back to the revolution. Now, if the revolution did not tinker with the Constitution, all this thing would not have happened. But the question I'm asking here, this Pension Restoration Act, or Disqualification Act, who did it? How it was done? Was it done after the revolution?
It was done during the revolution. That's
during
why.
The revolution.
Hold on. That's why we keep quoting the date, April 4th, 1983. That is the date that bill was passed.
Okay, so that was before the Constitution was reenacted.
Yeah.
Right. So if that is so, and the Constitution was reenacted and came back in its fullness, are you telling me that that is an extra clause that the new Constitution, the present Constitution, carry, which to me is unconstitutional?
No, we're speaking of a law here, not the Constitution. Constitution is the Constitution. Law is law.
Yeah.
The Constitution speaks to pensions. It does not speak as to exactly all categories of persons that qualify for the pensions. Would you listen, please?
Yeah.
Would you listen, please?
Okay, let me listen.
The Constitution in section 92 and 93 speaks to pensions. It doesn't lay out every single aspect. Now, what you have is a law that was put in place. Now, when the Constitution was reenacted, was reimposed, many of the people's laws were brought over and they remained laws. They were brought over. Many of for instance, the one that guides the creation of the National Insurance Scheme, which is in tandem with the Pension Disqualification Act. The laws for things that created the Marketing and National Importing Board, and many other laws. They were basically, I think they call it traversed. They were traversed, brought over.
Okay, so you're telling me that right now it is constitutional. That law is now constitutional. It has legal rights, legal teeth.
Yeah.
Just as the NIS.
Yeah, it's the law.
Okay, if the NIS was supposed to do right now what we are asking for in terms of the new law, and it is not in a position to do, shouldn't that particular law be reverted back prior the Disqualification Act?
This is what is being done on the negotiating table. I don't think you understand what
that is the consequence of when government tinker with things. You know,
my brother, I don't think you're listening.
I am listening.
No. Listen.
But it's complicated, and I'm saying
it's not as complicated as you're making it out to be, because it's simple. No. Listen. Hello. Listen.
It's not just us on.
He's not listening. You go listen that way. What is taking place in the negotiation will bring the outcome of a new law. In other words, you're going to replace the Pension Disqualification Act, you know. But it's what you replace it with. As it is right now, no new law has been brought to Parliament. No new law in relation to the pension issue. No new law has been brought to Parliament. Government has committed, they signed an MOU that you're going to restore pensions and you're going to reform what exists right now. So in other words, the discussion that's taking place between the government of Grenada negotiating team and the unions. Out of that is what is going to create that law that will go to the lower house and then the upper house and be signed by the Governor General. That's what's being done, you know. Because legally, as it is right now, this moment, government cannot pay that pension or gratuity because there is no law in place to pay it. Anyone has to get their pension, no gratuity, pension has to get it through the National Insurance Scheme. But government is saying that can't stand on its own, that can't work. So let's restore pensions to everybody, but let's reform the laws that govern it. So whether it's the prison officers, whether it's the police officers, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the public workers union workers, the public workers, let us sit together and come up with the various modalities and the various aspects of the new law that's going to be put in place to replace what exists there, to replace the Pension Disqualification Act. Because the Pension Disqualification Act is still in force right now. Government is saying, let us get rid of it. But government isn't going to just sit and say, okay, we draft a thing, we're getting rid of it and go to parliament with it and then tell the public workers. That's what they're meeting around the table to discuss.
Sheldon, let me ask you something. You may have a little bit more thing on that. The 70%, right? That was it agreed upon that the 70% of
the final
salary, was it agreed upon by the unions?
Yeah, that part much is agreed on because they signed to it. We have a caller.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning to you, sir.
Lord, I'm telling you, man, I'm just getting excited about the excitement that is taking place, especially coming from you all. Now, Mr. Scott, listen to this, I'm a little bit bothered by the actions that is going on. Now, this government, they restructure the entire economy without sending one worker home. You know, in contrast to the basic norms of restructuring. Now, before I quickly get into that, I must say, Devon,
yes, sir.
I hold whatever your issues are there, don't take no medication from Mr. Scott. I want you to know, don't be afraid to come up the hill. Things to me seems to be quite normal up here.
I will.
So don't be afraid.
I will. I will take your advice.
All right. Now, gentlemen, the reason why I see this action as political is because of this here. No, this is the government that made over 300 teachers permanent in the last 5 years. This is the government that paid over $110 million to public servants. This is the same government this year that gave over $42 million in scholarships to the same public servants, to the same, people who are withholding their labor today, children. This is the same government that agreed to restore and reform pension. This is the same government that pays teachers on time. This is the government that say we can only give you 2% now, whereas the previous NDC government could not give them nothing.
-0.
Mr. Scott, listen, I will wrap up here. I was listening to the interim leader of the NDC and another morning program, and after listening to the entire discussion, I'm convinced that the NNP have to be prepared to govern for a long time to come. I'm thinking about another 20 years. Why? Because the NDC is not talking as a party that can put a capable team of people together to govern our affairs. Hear what they're asking for. The NDC is asking for the removal and repeal of the Physical Responsibility Act. This is an act that keeps us in check to ensure we do not go back to where we was before. This is an act that was put in place to ensure that the progress that we make, you know, is so obvious to the people that it can enhance, you know, our growth. Mr. Scott, how come you could be so at war with a government that have done more for your entity than any other government in the last 35 years? How come you could be so adamant, you understand, in saying you want what you want? I mean, don't forget, the GUT was part of, you know, was part of the group that make the sacrifice. They know where Grenada was. They know the economic and financial cesspit that Grenada was in. So today we have recovered and recuperated to an extent. And the government is saying, look, we can give you, that's what we can give you. And you are saying, no, we don't want that. We want what we want. Even if we have to go back to the dark days, even if the other folks that make the sacrifice cannot get anything in the next 10 years, we don't care. We want what we want. Mr. Scott, this is unfair. It is not helpful. And I hope that the GUT will see the need to go back to the negotiating table and hopefully come up with a more amicable, number, that they can work with. But I can assure you, a lot of teachers who is at home today, they are not so supportive of the union actions, but they just don't want to be out there, for fingers to be pointed at them. Mr. Scott, to you and Mr. Romain, have a pleasant day, gentlemen.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
Wonderful day.
So things normal at the hospital, Devon.
Yeah, definitely.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
440-7377 might be able to take a quick call.
347-329-3101.
Yeah, so the unions decide that they want their days of rest and reflection, and the cabinet has decided that the people of Grenada will not pay for the days of rest and reflection. Rest and reflect on your own time. Yeah, so if you want to reflect, no problem. Government will not pay. And thus far, it's already 25% of their
monthly salary.
Well, 25% as of tomorrow.
Yeah,
once they decide that they're staying home tomorrow. And if they decide that they're going to up the ante, then it's going to be a lot more than 25%. So I wonder if the union had that kind of money, but I feel Grenada union and teachers had that kind of money. A couple million you're talking about there already.
They have a credit union.
I know if they could dip into the credit union to get monies to pay that. They're supposed to have a strike fund.
Yeah,
every union is supposed to have money in a strike fund.
Yeah.
I know for a fact who has it.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we must have a strike fund so that when you strike, you could give your workers the money for the time that they strike and that kind of thing. So maybe they have a healthy strike fund.
Yeah. We have come into the end of the program and we have not said good morning to all those online. Yeah.
Good morning to you all online.
All of you. We apologize for that. We're very sorry. But we see you attentive, making your contributions and so on. We muchly appreciate that. Greatly appreciate that,
Yeah.
So.
Yes, indeed. It's important for us to understand this thing. If there is an industrial dispute and between the government of Grenada and the Grenada Union of Teachers, an industrial dispute, they go around the negotiating table, the Minister of Labour, the Commissioner of Labour, so on, so on, so on. It goes through the process. Well, Commissioner of Labour. Labour Commissioner, right. So it goes there. They reach at a stalemate. They try arbitration. That doesn't work. Then the union can call a strike. That's a different thing. But you haven't had, number one, you don't have an industrial dispute. Number two, the Labour Commissioner, know nothing about that. The Minister of Labour, know nothing about that. But you just call in, willy-nilly, you just call in strikes. So if you want to call a strike and call it day of rest and reflection, call it contemplation, call it days of calculation, a strike by any other name is still a strike.
Still a strike.
And government doesn't have to pay for those days. So if that is how it had to go, that is how it had to go. Let's take, what would be your final call?
Yes. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, my brother. I do not want to speak to you on air.
Well, you're already
on air. But I am here listening to the program and I'm digesting everything.
Okay, well, you're on air?
I'm on air. Oh, yes, my God. But listen, what I want to say is hello to my dear friend, Miss Jacob.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'm up here in the cold, man. I'll be here for another month or so, but I'm taking in everything. So I just want to extend my regards to my family, my NNP family, and say, well, stay strong and let's hang in there, man. Regardless to all the what's going on with all the discussion that doesn't make sense. We just got to stay true to the cause.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, our responsibility is to be able to provide effective leadership and to do what's best for our country.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that our brothers and sisters are standing firm.
Yeah, I miss you when I was home the other day. Huh?
I know you're looking for cuckoo.
No, I get real cuckoo. I ain't lying. I get real cuckoo once. I get real. But I miss you, man. He's my boy. Once I'm up there, I must look for certain people, and you are one of them.
I know.
Yeah,
well,
so
I know the
miss
love
you.
is there, but boy, we just gotta, it's an uphill battle, and we just have to stay focused and continue to remain vigilant, and to do whatever is necessary to provide effective leadership and stability in our country.
Hey, while you're up there, say hello to Puma for me, all right?
I definitely will.
All right.
All right,
definitely will. We're supposed to go to a 9-night press tonight, so we, definitely we're going to meet up.
Oh, yes. Just give him my regards, all right?
All right, Brother Romain.
All right.
You enjoy the rest of your day today.
All right, all the best, man.
Okay, take
All
care.
right,
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, man, I get enough cuckoo. Believe me, I get cuckoo until I puff.
Oh, you don't have to say that. You know that is my favorite, boy. You don't have to say that out loud, so.
They handle me, boy. I like,
Yeah,
it's family. It's family again.
Special occasion.
If it's one person I know that be there was him, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just done wrong at the time. Folks, that's all the time we have for Hard Talk today. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow, God's willing, with some more Hard Talk. And in whatever you say, whatever you do, make sure you do it safe and secure. Want to be speaking to and with you.
And not about you.
Love each and every one of you unconditionally.
Peace out.
Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture, and...
Government to meet with Labour Commissioner to discuss current impasse with public sector trade unions. Details to this story and more coming up in the National Report. Welcome back with the National Report for today, Monday, November 12th, 2018. I am Wendy Edmond. Government will seek the intervention of the Labour Commissioner as part of efforts to resolve the current impasse with public sector trade unions. This was communicated to the President General of the Grenada Union of Teachers and the 3 other executive members who met Monday morning with the chairman of the Government's Pension Engagement Committee, Mistress Beryl Isaac. Government has since received an invitation for a meeting with the Labour Commissioner, which it promptly accepted in a bid to resolve the impasse. At Monday's meeting, Mistress Isaac also relayed to the union representatives government's desire to return to the negotiating table to further discuss the issue of pension restoration and reform, but it will not do so under duress. However, the GUT President General indicated that the union will not withdraw from industrial action unless they have a written proposal from government addressing their demands. The GUT says its actions are sanctioned by the other trade unions involved in the pension negotiations. The government negotiating team says it has been honoring both in spirit and in letter the provisions of a memorandum of understanding signed with public sector unions on the restoration and reform of pension for public officers. The union's claim is that there was an agreement to 25% gratuity, but Chairman of the Government's Pension Engagement Committee, Mistress Beryl Isaac, says that it is not what is on paper. She offered a full explanation during a recent interview with Mr. Philomena Robertson, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister.
When we were discussing, well, among ourselves, not with the unions, we considered what the government's portion, we said that would be configured in some way to provide for gratuity. It was always our thinking it would be configured in some way. So, but there was no formula, there was no agreement whether it would be 10, 15, 100. We were as much as possible to see what are the tenets of the 58th law that could be retained. And in the earlier discussion, we looked at the 25%, but when the calculations were done, and even before we had Ministry of Finance run the figures, we saw that from the pensions perspective, what was coming out government, it would have been manageable, but from the gratuity, it would have strangled the government. And this is not something that we could put for the country. It would not be something that was good for the country. And so we, among ourselves, again, began looking at how the formula could be adjusted to be able to provide something.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mistress Ophelia Wells Cornwell, says they must bear in mind that the IMF, in its Article 4 consultation, had warned that the pension issue, if not properly managed, can throw the fiscal situation off track. That risk was not highlighted only by the IMF, but also by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, the CDB, and other partners.
One would argue that the 25%, as an example, of gratuitous payment, the contention of the time value of money. This is a one-off payment that is not subject to interest. The interest that you would get if you get it today, if we go down that particular road, would only be 2% in the bank. Yeah, if you go to save on that money. Now, the monthly payment that you get on pension, the monthly commitment of the state, that is subject to an increase and an interest. And that interest is when we negotiate for public service increase. Right now, I mean, if we take the last year, this year, and next year, 3, 3, and 4. So it means that the pensioners would get a 4% in 2019. Now, the 98% base on which you get the 4% is higher than a 75% base. And that is critical. The 4% interest, look at it as interest that you get, you cannot get that in the bank. You cannot get it in the bank. So we have to be clear on what it is that you're not losing from that $100. Let's put it very simple. You are getting $2 up front and you're getting $98 over time, and the $98 is subject to interest. Interest by way of negotiation. With the 25%, you get $25 up front, one-off. Whatever you do with it today, that's it. And you get $75 over a period of time spread. And because you have to pay back that $25 in 12 and a half years. That's $25 that you got up front. And I think that needs to be clear.
In this other story, the MOU, which was signed between government and TAU, GUT, the RGPF Gazetted Officers Association, RGPF Welfare Association, and Her Majesty's Prison Officers Welfare Association, outlines the guiding principles which will govern the restoration and reformation of pension to public officers. A two-phased approach has been adopted for the pension restoration and reform. Phase 1 will target public officers and members of the disciplined forces who have been or are appointed on a definitive basis to established post from and including April 4th, 1983 to December 31st, 2018, and who meet the criteria established through the process. One of the 7 principles agreed on state that the minimum pension replacement rate for eligible officers, including all members of the disciplined forces after completing 26 years of service, shall be 70%, and for service under 26 years, pensionable benefits for eligible officers shall be applied on prorated basis. It also states that on the determination of the overall cost, the parties agree to negotiate a payment arrangement for the retroactive amount that is based on affordability. The agreement reached shall be catered for in the annual targeted expenditure and based on cash flow, and where the government foresees a challenge to meet the annual payment, the parties will meet during the budget consultative process to revise the targeted amount. The MOU also states that the parties will explore varying options to reach a mutual settlement with respect to the retroactive cost. This is the National Report. More news after the break.
Big business don't participate.
We are here to celebrate with a man who God has chosen to lead this wonderful nation. Yes. And today, as we rejoice, we celebrate, we know the whole of heaven is rejoicing with us. And we are happy.
Pastor Jeremiah.
We are happy to know that God has kept him for another year. And as we celebrate today, we lift this glass in honor of you for another birth.
The celebratory move was kicked into high gear on Monday as cabinet ministers and ministry workers joined in the birthday celebration of Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. A small contingent of the staff of the administrative department took the time to ensure that the Prime Minister's day on the job was not an ordinary one, but one that depicts another milestone in his life. According to one of the staff, she is happy to be celebrating with Dr. Mitchell as he continues his life's journey, not just as an individual, but as an exemplary leader to this nation.
Prime Minister, we just want to say a special happy birthday to you. We are so grateful to have you, in not just as an individual, but as the leader of our nation. We thank God for placing you here. We thank God for your contribution to our country, and we wish you all God's blessings for many, many more years.
Prime Minister Mitchell says he is happy to celebrate another year of his life as he continues to give service to the people of this nation.
We are in service to our country. And as I told my colleagues a while ago, my only wish is when I'm out of this job that the progress continues. That's my wish. You know, it would hurt me to know, because I've seen it happen over and over in the Caribbean when leaders leave, which we all have to, that the thing goes down. It should not happen that way. In other words, it's a reflection of my leadership if the progress doesn't continue, and I would feel bad about it. That's a fact. One's ability to lead and to guide is also to prepare for your leaving. And therefore, if I leave and the thing goes down, then I have to take some responsibility for it.
And that's a wrap for the National Report for today, Monday, November 12th, 2018. On behalf of all of us in the newsroom, I am Wendy Edmond, thanking you for viewing.
Gratuity is not a payment from the employer in addition to pension. Gratuity is an advanced payment on pension. It is equivalent to and the same as a salary advance. Under the 1958 pension formula, a worker had the option to receive an advance payment on his or her pension of 25%. thus reducing his or her monthly payment to 75%. For example, If a public officer's pension worked out to be $2,000 a month, and he or she took a gratuity of 25%, his or her pension will be reduced to $1,500 a month. The gratuity.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated. The Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts present Youth Week 2018, empowering our youth, shaping our community, protecting our future. The week of activities kicks off on Friday, November 9th with the Minister's Address from 8 p.m. Saturday, 10th November, Health Fair, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Cuthbert Peters Park, War, and the Fitness Revolution, 3 p.m. Concord Junction. Sunday, 11th November, it's the Peace Concert, Grenville Bus Terminal. On Tuesday, 13th November, ministers meet with the youth at Her Majesty's Prison. Thursday, 15th November from 5 p.m. It's the Imani Graduation, Youth Awards and Gala. And on Friday, 16th through the weekend, it's the National Youth Service Weekend. Every parish get involved. And on Saturday, 17th November, it's Youth Expo, Explosion Fashion and Cultural Day. 2 p.m. until at Hero Square, Victoria in St. Mark. So remember, Youth Week 2018, November 9th to the 17th.
Reggae.